Hello, good evening. We are back with the SAPI IP Business Talks. We are now in Germany, so it's just a talk between Hamburg and Munich. So it's not that long distance today. I'm very happy that we have guests today. We have guests who wants to discuss with us, and we are live, so that means you are invited to talk with us, to give your insights, your questions, your comments. Our guests today are Dr. Christian Stauf, Sharoop Bandashi, Nikki Wennemeyer, and Stephen Young. I'm very happy that they are here and give us their positions, their opinions. And my interview partner today is Dr. Claas Gerding. I'm very happy that he accepted the invitation. It's always a challenge to ask people whether they would like to come in front of the camera and want to have a live discussion. And Claas, I know him for some years, I was. When I met him first in LinkedIn, I told him that I'm very impressed that he is so heavily active there, and so that's not that normal. And out of that first discussion, we had many meetings together and cooperate, and I'm very happy that you are here. So, Dr. Claas Gerding, tell us a little bit. What is your background, and what are you doing right now? And especially, how did you came into the field of IP?
Yes. So, yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome, and thanks for the invitation. Yes. I'm Claas Gerding-Reimers, and I'm working as an IP counsel. I'm at Basler AG. And also, I have now a little side business as an IP coach. Yeah, originally, I come from I'm a biologist with a chemical and also with a chemical background. So I did my PhD in a chemistry department and was there in the area of drug discovery. So I moved from biology to chemistry, and this was actually during my PhD thesis my first touch point with IP. There were small molecules which have been developed in the department, and then there was a question: publishing or patenting. So this was the first time I was in touch with patents. And after my PhD, I decided to go this route, and I ended up to start and do the in-house patent career. Let's say it like that. And so I'm for more than 10 years now. I have been several in-house IP functions with a strong focus on patents. I've been in the life science industry. I've been in the FMCG industry, and now I'm in the electronics industry with where software IP questions are heavily discussed.
Okay. So publish or perish? No, publish or or patent was your decision, which brought you into the field. That's interesting, because that's quite often for researchers a very, let's say, critical decision, because at the end in the science field, the question, how many publications do you have, and how good they are ranked? That's the cornerstone, and it's nice having a patent. I mean, that's really a critical question. Today we started the discussion. We started the discussion with these interplay between invention and innovation. I mean, it's not very new, obviously, but still, I mean, when you look into journals, into the newspapers, then you see something like, we have so many patents, therefore we are so innovative. So there's a kind of of consequence. And of course, there are some famous examples like Apple, which are innovative, but not really the inventors of most of the things which make them innovative. Or other examples where you have many patents and the company is not that much of innovative. So obviously, innovation and invention is not the same, and there is a certain interplay. Definitely, it is so that invention comes from the technology, from R&D. And then with the term innovation, we understand more the situation of having a success in the market, having access to markets. From the customer perspective, customers don't buy technology, they buy customer benefits. So obviously, invention is not alone, so it's not enough. We need more. That's for sure, to be successful in the market, typically. So the first question to you is, can you explain a little bit how you use IP to make this match, that market, technology, customers, competition, that all comes together and makes sense to at the end to optimize benefits and returns from innovations?
Yes, so yeah, I mean, you said it. It's often it's misused, or let's say it like that, or it's wrongly used. Also in media, invention, innovation, they are sometimes treated equally or called the same. And of course, we have in an innovation, or an ingredient, an absolute necessary ingredient often is that there is that there is an invention underlying, that we have a technical invention. So, and in the course of the technical invention, yes, we have IP, which is then generated, but the invention itself, of course, it doesn't have necessarily so much worth by itself. The same as with IP. I mean, you can patent basically everything. So in the end, the customer decides if the invention is successful, or the innovation, which is basically created by the invention. And of course, there are several, and you mentioned Apple. And Apple is quite good in the commercialization, of course. Yeah, we also have Fraunhofer, who discovered, or who really made this MP3 format. So they really invented it, let's say it like that. But who really used it and made a customer story out of that? It was Apple. So, and this is where somehow the circle can be drawn. So we have an invention, which would then in this particular case be created by Fraunhofer, the MP3 format. They did not completely fail to commercialize it. I mean, they had through their patents, they had license gains. So it was 500 million euro. So it was not nothing. But in the end, the big money, and what really made the story work so well was Apple. Apple created the iPod. And the iPod, this was the customer product. And this customer product then was, of course, highly successful because it satisfied customers' needs. And IP was a tool for Fraunhofer in this case to save a little bit of this invention, of this underlying invention.
I mean, we have many examples for that. So in Germany, we invented the video cassette recorder by Grundig. And in the 60s, I think in the late 50s, early 60s, it was invented here. Also the fax machine, but finally the companies were not able to commercialize that. I mean, one of our guests asked a question or giving a comment in, which is quite interesting. It's a deep dive now, but I mean, we can stand that. He or she, I don't know, says that of course, we have these innovation cycles. So to a certain extent, I guess what the guy means is a product life cycle, and according to the product life cycle, we have to handle IP accordingly. Yeah, and IP does not mean patent. That means we have also trademarks. Trademarks generates then brands, and we have design rights and the product designs. So how would you recommend to handle these different types of IP in a portfolio for innovation according to the product lifecycle?
Yeah, I mean, every in the end, of course, the innovation is it's if you talk about innovation, then it's important to protect the innovation. It's can be protected by various IP means. Let's say like that, yeah. So in practice, yeah, it's often a good idea. It depends on the setup of a company. Let's say like that, to separate the technical IP questions a bit from the soft IP questions. Let's say like to talk about designs, trademarks separately from the technical IP. Of course, there needs to be some exchange, and if there's innovation, both sides have to be addressed, both the soft IP and the technical IP side. But from a practical standpoint, in many companies, it's the case. These discussions start on the basis of let's say an invention disclosure or an ongoing freedom to operate task. Yeah. So, and then the inventors or the invention disclosure is there. Speaking from operative, we talk about operative patent work, and then it's decided how to deal with that. And then, of course, it's almost always the question: do we file a patent or not? Yeah.
To a certain extent, I disagree. So I have two aspects here, which I think should be discussed. The first thing is that these different IP rights have different timing issues, and of course, so for example, we have the famous textbook example of aspirin. And this is done by many companies, that you have a limited lifetime for your patent, for example, for the technical right, for the technical aspect of the product. Here is the molecule of aspirin, and then you have the trademark which covers your brand, establishes your brand. And then you shift from the technical exclusivity to brand loyalty, and with that mechanism you can extend pretty much the lifetime of your protection, and buyer is still able to have a price premium. Yeah. So that's one aspect. This is the timing issue, which I think it's critical, and companies should able to manage that. The other thing which I think should be discussed is the question: is it really so that we have on a timeline again, that we have the ultimate starting point of IP is an invention? So I don't believe that. To a certain extent, that makes no sense for me. Okay, so I would say it makes a lot of sense to say a company has an idea for an innovation, and then the company starts to ask the question, so to speak, what can be protected here? Yes. That means you create the invention out of the wish to have a certain protection for an innovation, and that means first the innovations, or first the, let's say, the market perspective, and then comes the question: how can we protect that? Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. So this should definitely be the case often, and this is, I would say, the theoretical optimal case, which is also, but from my perspective, is one side of the medal. I would say, okay, we have this top-down approach, which is always good because then we can draw the circle from the market or from the customer over the invention, which is then generated and back to the customer, so to create the innovation. That's certainly a good idea, and that's to do that, because otherwise you have innovations which nobody buys, and the market in the end they decide, and if the innovation is rubbish, then everything everything doesn't count. So, but also what I've learned actually, so the ideas of inventors, if you don't put them in borders of thinking towards achieving a particular innovation or goal, which is dictated, let's say, by the market, they can also be quite successful to also follow this bottom-up approach of an innovation. This is also, I think it's good to have both, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I just say, so sometimes when I'm discussing with companies and I say, okay, yeah, I would say, when, to a certain extent, okay, just to be provocative, when you think you have something invented, yeah, you cannot discuss with them anymore. So then it's in the room, it's in anywhere. We have an invention. Yeah, we need a patent. I say, are you really sure that it is that you should patent that? Yeah, just because it's an invention, you don't need a patent. You have an invention. Okay, is that really a business case? Is that a use case? Is there a market? Blah 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 blah. So it is this reflex. Yeah, we have an invention. Okay, it is. We can patent it. Yeah, the question is, should you? That's a different question. I mean, something what I like from Stephen Young, who made a comment, what happens, yeah, when a system runs nuts. And he says, in China we have this funding, this subsidiary from the government for filing patents, and that one reason why we see that flood of patents coming out of China is that many companies simply fulfill, yeah, the requirements to file a patent or having an invention, but there is no innovation behind that. So that means we generate this huge amount of state-of-the-art, or this huge amount of patent propensity for nothing. Yeah, just to get subsidiaries, and that's a good happens when we think in. So when we ask the wrong question, yeah, in terms of are you inventive? So yeah, maybe. And second, when we use instruments which are misleading, like a subsidiary just for filing patents. Yeah, I mean that we had that in Germany too. Yeah, so it's not so long ago that you received money just for filing patents. But at the end, I like this funding of patent attorneys, but at first I don't think patent attorneys need that kind of funding, and second, it just adds up patents. Yeah?
Yeah, and I think it's still, if it's funded, it's a bad idea to file a patent like that, because it's in the end there are a lot of costs associated with it. Still, if you prosecute a patent application until the end and have a patent family, I mean, you can have several 10,000s of euros which you spend, right? And of course, this is an it has to be considered when filing patents. I mean, I'm not saying okay, let's file every patent. Still, it's always good to have incentives in companies to file patents. And yeah, of course, it's good. We are in Germany. We are in quite a good position with the employee remuneration. I'm
not sure whether this is a good position, because many companies tell me that they feel that they are blackmailed from their inventors, yeah, to file that rubbish, and it's another discussion. Okay, that's a very German effect, let's say. Okay, so coming back to the question. So we have a timing issue. We have an issue of what comes first. Yeah. and then we go over the line over the long run. So we establish a product type like the iPod or the iPhone. But there's another issue which I think which is critical when we talk about IP portfolios. Yeah, and this is that typically IP experts do not exist. Yeah, what exists is a patent expert and a trademark expert and a design right or copyright expert, and so my let's say experience is that it is very hard to find somebody who is really willing to make a deep dive in all that questions to simply give an answer for, let's say, product manager. The product manager says, okay, I have this and that idea. Okay, so right now we celebrate on LinkedIn the Thermomix again, because now they have the next stage of their cookie do, so their recipe platform. And now you can upload your own recipes. Okay, so it's gamification and this kind. Let's say somebody comes to you, yeah, and say, okay, Claas, I have cookie do. This is my idea. How can I protect it? And the protection means, yeah, that I have some competitive advantages, and I want to make them sustainable. Yeah. So and now I mean that's a good question. Yeah. And so let's say, how would you react? So would you take a team where you say, okay, I have to organize different experts? You would start with an analysis, or like David Callow says, you would start with an FTO. So in terms of understanding the environment. So what is your procedure here?
Yeah. So my approach would always be to look at if it has some business potential now, or if there's a potential if it's in line. Let's say if it's a single inventor, okay, it may be a new business. But in this particular case, I guess it was we have to ask if it's in line with the business, if it's in line with the business model, with the business strategy. Still, if it's not in line with the business strategy, it may also gain. Of course, you should not restrict your view. This is what I want to say about your business. What you have now. You also have to think a little bit in the future. Yeah, and this is always the problem with patents. Let's say like that. Still, if guys from marketing, let's say. Guys from marketing, they have the perspective or often have the perspective that they want to protect the existing products, say like that. So, but this of course does not work for underlying inventions which may have potential in 10 years. I mean, if there's an invention which has let's say the future technology inside, let's say about blockchain or some IoT aspect, which may not relevant for the business right now. It may be relevant for the business in 10 years. It may be relevant for a competitor in 5 years, and all these considerations must be made.
I agree, but is it so? So when you say protection, so to be honest, I don't like that word. Okay.
Yeah.
Because protection means that something is done. Okay. I am protected. Something is done. I don't like it because typically it is a starting point and not an end point when you file, let's say, a patent. Yeah? So what you definitely have is exclusivity. The question is what you're doing with it. So it's not a verb, it's a fact. You have exclusivity. And now tell me, what is the contribution of this given exclusivity from that patent, trademark, whatever, for your business? That's one aspect. But I want to focus on another thing, because when you say you have to think about future business, I agree 100%. Yeah, so it's at least a long-term game, IP. But are you really sure that the focus on your own realization and your own product is the right perspective to use for bidding rights. I mean, for me, quite often, people who are not in that business don't understand that intellectual property is, I mean, how is property defined? It's the exclusion of others. And exclusion thought, I would say, the cornerstone is what do I want to forbid and not what do I have invented. That are two different questions. Maybe I want to have a secret, a trade secret on what I invented, but I know now what I have to forbid. Is that something which you use in your practice?
Yeah, well, it strongly depends. Let's say on the overall, let's say the IP strategy. If the focus of a company is to mainly protect their products, existing products, or if they want to invest in future technologies, if they want to generate freedom to operate for themselves, if they want to leave out their competitors. And of course, these considerations are always important when it comes to the decision of filing a patent application or not. And this generates then exclusivity in some form. But also, this is not if it comes to let's say like digital inventions, there are also many other IP models which need to be considered, right? So often we have it with software IP. We have this discussion about whether keeping it secret or as a trade secret or patenting it. And this is a question which is often not you can decide it on a high level, on the feeling, let's say like that. Would this patent go through, and would I what do I have to disclose to the public? Because you have to disclose your invention, of course, if you want to file a patent. If you have a nice software code which you don't want to be disclosed and which is the heart of the invention, then you have a problem because you teach the competitors how to use the invention, and you don't want that.
Yeah. So my experience is that it is an issue, to explain to the company that it is much more important having a good forbidding right compared to explaining your invention, and maybe that is from time to time even the opposite. So, but the idea is I am producing something, and I would want to have what I am producing protected. But in a differentiation competition, the cornerstone is that you are exclusive in the recognition of your customer. And for example, one of my examples in the classroom is Shazam. For Shazam, we have more than 200 patents, and most of them has nothing to do with the concrete app which Shazam is delivering. But they simply want to be the only one for that solution, and that means they patent. I mean, it's nothing new. It is done from the German chemical industry in the late 19th century. So they knew how to make a certain blue color, a dye, and they patent heavily around that. So alternatives to avoid that the Netherlands and the Brits are able to have similar dyes. I mean, nothing new, but still, I mean, many people don't understand that that patents are not little baskets in which is technology in. It doesn't make any sense to think in that way. It's not technology, it's a right, it's a legal position, a right against third parties, and you should think heavily, what can you forbid? Exactly what you said, Claas, that why should I forbid something which I cannot enforce? Doesn't make any sense. So to my understanding, it's quite often so that this shortcut, I have an invention and this will be my innovation, is not really helping. And Keith Schiller says, from Nestlé, is totally right that for a lot of innovations, it is difficult to explain if there will be a market or not. So that's the next step. So they have the invention, we have the innovation, and then the question is, how big will be the innovation? And we know Nestlé had a hard time to make money out of Nespresso. That was not this fast market success. This was the opposite. to find a way really to market it, to make it big, like MP3. I mean, that's what we say when it is an innovation and when it is a huge success. And Fraunhofer failed for sure. You mentioned these digital products, digital services, use cases, whatever. Do you think that there are certain IP types which are more relevant than others when it comes to digital products and services?
Yeah, certainly. As I said, trade secrets, I guess, should be in many cases discussed. This is also often the case because simply because many software inventions are now considered technical and they can't be protected. You can only protect them as a trade secret, or maybe as a copyright, the pure code. But the copyright, of course, is for me this is a fallback position. Let's say like that when it comes to IP protection. It's very hard to enforce, and we had the case, I think it was last year, of Google versus Oracle with a alleged copying of the Java code, and I mean it was. I would have guessed. I would have guessed that Google would lose this case because they copied, but. It was the other way around in the end. Decided.
Yeah, but I mean that's a wonderful example, Claas, because yes, they copied. Yeah, of course they copied. They copied a 300-page book. Yeah, the API for Android. Yes, they copied, but this is another. I mean, we talk about copyright law, and there's this in the US. We have so here in Europe we have that limits, and the US call it fair use. And the highest court in the US was not really focusing on, I like to say that in that way, not so much on the legal aspect of the issue, on the business side of the issue. So what Google did is they flourished, they created a huge universe out of using that API, and then the court said, yeah, this is a fair use, that makes sense. It's very interesting what happens there. So I would say, like with Bastian Best, we discussed that you simply cannot compare. Saying should I use copyright or should I use patent, because the two instruments meaning something completely different, and there is no trade-off between the two parts. So when you want to go to the root of a patent protection, then you have to make your app or use case or business model to make it patentable, so make it technical. On the other hand, what I try to explain always is, when you call it a digital business model, explain me what is digital on it, and that means you use technology anyhow. So something has to be technical on that, otherwise you can't call it digital business model.
Yeah, and additionally to that, if it comes to digital business models, I mean, you've also said as an example, I think apps like apps, you know, they are really short-living. That's a thing which also needs to be considered. And then often it's a patent needs 3 to 5 years until it's granted, and then you have to think whether patent protection really makes sense in this regard, right?
Absolutely.
Also digital business model.
Again, a timing issue. Yeah, absolutely.
And another model, what I just wanted to say, another model which is important are data. Which is really more and more, and every not only if it comes to IP. I mean, data are the new gold, and also many patents. Also, if we talk about AI-based inventions like deep neural networks, I mean, working in the computer vision industry, and often there are also questions about data usage and data accessibility and all that kind of stuff. You know, if you have a patent protection, then on a technical invention, on a specific neural network architecture, but you are dependent on your innovation on high quality data, on the accessibility, then you have basically a problem. And there's no central protection for data. I mean, that's a big problem. The data protection.
Is that so? Is that so, Claas?
I'm always hearing these discussion about data accessibility and data quality, and of course we have so many.
So, my general recommendation to that situation is, first, data itself is obviously not patentable. It's just there, and there's no technicality in it. Yeah. But why should you patent data? I don't understand that. So what you can patent, as long as it is technical, you patent the usage of that data. Okay, so in a use case, you say, what would you do when you have that data? And that means de facto, you don't have to have access to that. So I had a wonderful discussion with a company, and they told me they in the steel mill business, yeah, they make steel mills more efficient. And they told me, yeah, Alex, once we had access to that data, we might be able to realize a much higher efficiency on such a steel mill. And then I said, yeah, and why you do not patent it? This application, this way to make the steel mill more efficient. Because at the end, in the patent, nobody takes care whether you have right now factual access or not to that data. So you patent the use case, the other guys have the data, and now you start a wonderful negotiation. Yeah, so you know what you can do with the data and have a patent, at least an application for that. The others have factual access to the data. Now work together, honeys. Yeah.
Still, this is somehow contradictory to the basic patent deal. I would say, if you have the data, if you don't have access to the data and only can negotiate it with one second party who has the access, let's say it like that. But anyway, if you have a patent, the whole public should be available to work and exploit the underlying invention. That's my understanding of it. But still, but you're certainly right. That's a way to collaborate with others, and that's, I think, otherwise I can also not imagine how this all data. This data challenge works. I mean, there are several collaboration initiatives also. Cloud-based services like this Gaia X. I don't know the exact status of this initiative, but it's only one example where many European companies can collect their data on this cloud-based software and work together on high quality and data, and also to have the accessibility. So you're completely right. There's no protection for data, and I guess it won't exist in the medium future, like data patenting or something like that. But that's this is a good example of where open innovation kicks in, I guess.
Yeah, and to my understanding, it's simply not necessary. So you can ask the question: where comes the data from? What do I have to measure? How get it? And then what I'm doing with it. So between the data, so in my practice, I had never a case where a pure isolated data protection might have made sense, but maybe that's my limited experience to that. So for the last minutes, I would like to come to another very important issue, and that's the question how to organize these IP perspective, and not just the IP perspective, the question, how can we organize the interaction within a company when different people have to come together and have to interact. So my experience is that when a product manager and an R&D guy and an IP guy are in the same room, yeah. So let's say marketing, R&D, and IP. So maybe they speak from a formal standpoint, the same language, but they don't understand each other. Yeah. in terms of they cannot really come to a joint result on what they are working. So so you come from a company, that's what you have on a day-to-day basis. So what is your approach on that?
Yeah, of course. In companies, meetings are really beloved generally, and that's basically it. I mean, you have to bring the people together. You have to foster a discussion between all these different functions, let's say like that, and to also to align these perspectives which each function has: marketing, protecting products, R&D, protecting technology, finance, IP as a cost center, or maybe IP as a revenue generator. Yeah, and all these or legal, the FTO question, legal risks, and you have you need to bring all these people together, and yeah, in form of operative or strategic, let's say like meetings where those questions are discussed. And this is important to do this on a regular basis. It's not a one-stop journey, let's say like that. We meet once a year and talk about IP. And also, in old times, I guess it was always like the function of the IP manager was, let's say like that. It was often a guy from R&D who doesn't want to research anymore and who deals with the invention disclosures, let's say like that, and file patents. Of course, this role has dramatically changed, and it needs to be, and this is the role of an IP manager. And how I see it, it needs to be proactively interpreted at first point on operative work, to get in touch with all the developers, to stay on top of their mind, and also to get a feeling for everything. And on the other hand, the other big task which came also is like you have to foster the IP development of the company, which means like developing the IP function, developing a discussion how to deal with IP strategically. Often it's only the IP manager is the only function in the company who can do that. The others, they have other tasks, and they don't care about IP. They want to sell products, They want to, let's say like that, they want to sell products. That's the revenue generator. IP costs money, and it's it's not the revenue generator. And you have to constantly play the drums as an IP manager to increase also the awareness.
Yeah. And how do you let's say, how do you keep the motivation high there, that you really get the input, because typically IP is seen as, boring and I don't know, not really, as I said, not really the money maker. So what is your secret to motivate the people to work with you and to bring really the ideas in the process?
Yeah, I mean the one, I don't know if it's a big secret, but what is important is to actually to not be a legal stickler or an inhibitor of innovation. Let's say like that. Often IP has a tendency to be seen as such. If they come on, we are now we have to deal with the FTO question. Oh shit, we have to go to our IP manager, and you need to that's not the way you should approach that. The way to approach to understand, to be empathic to the people, and also to not inhibit the agile process, the agile innovation model that foster this, and also don't make a big FTO, let's say like that, if it can be stepwise approach on an agile basis, so that's actually
okay. So be polite and motivate your people, and don't bother them with too much work.
It's always a good idea, I guess.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Jas. Yeah. Thank you to the audience for this evening. I see many topics are open. This interplay between innovation and invention, and the interplay of patents and all the other IP rights, that is still an issue, and we cannot solve it here. But there's a lot of best practice, and I'm happy that together with us we had Dr. Christian Stauf, Sharoop Banashi, Stephen Young, and Nikki Vennemeyer with us with their questions. Join us in the after show party on LinkedIn. So also Claas will be there and answers in the chat to your questions. And I'm happy to meet you there and to discuss that further. Claas, thank you very much for your time for today. Thank you for joining us. And I hope we will have the opportunity to proceed with this many open questions in the future again.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.